I didn't expect her to be waiting in the kitchen when I came home that night. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice every sound your shoes make on the tile. She stood by the counter with a half-empty glass of wine, backlit by the warm under-cabinet lights. "Hey," I said, a little too softly. She looked over her shoulder. The glance wasn't casual, it stayed, like she had been thinking about something before I walked in and wasn't ready to stop. "You're late," she said, setting the glass down. "I almost thought you wouldn't come back tonight." I shrugged, suddenly aware of the dirt on my shirt from work. "Had a late shift, sorry." Her mouth curved just barely. "You don't need to apologize." She didn't move, and neither did I. The space between us felt smaller than it was. Her hair was pulled back loose, a few strands falling forward against her cheek. The robe she wore was belted, but loose enough that it didn't quite hide the shape of her. I tried not to stare, or maybe I did, and she noticed. She broke the silence first. "You've grown into a man I can't ignore." It should have sounded like a joke, but it didn't. Her tone was quiet, almost matter-of-fact, and it landed somewhere between compliment and confession. My throat went dry. "You mean that like?" "What exactly?" She let out a breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "Just what I said. You're not the boy I used to know. It's strange sometimes." Her fingers tapped the counter, restless. I stepped closer, not sure why, maybe just to hear her better. "Strange how?" I asked. Her eyes met mine, and this time she didn't look away. "You carry yourself differently. People must notice you now." I swallowed, feeling heat creep up the back of my neck. "Do you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for her glass, but her hand brushed mine where it rested on the counter. It was nothing, just skin against skin, but it stayed there a second too long. I didn't move. "You should eat something," she said finally, pulling her hand back, but her voice had dropped. "I'm not that hungry," I replied, still watching her. The room felt warmer than before, or maybe it was just me. She took a step closer, as if to pass by me, but stopped. I could smell her perfume now, something light, faintly floral, mixed with the sharpness of wine. Her shoulder brushed mine as she reached for the light switch. The soft hum of the refrigerator was suddenly the loudest sound in the house. I could feel her looking at me, even after the lights dimmed. Then a sudden sound broke through the moment, the front door opening. We both froze. The sound of the front door closing lingered like a warning bell. She moved first, straightening, her expression settling into something calm, unreadable. "It's probably just the wind," she said, though we both knew it wasn't. I nodded, but the moment we just had still clung to the air between us. She poured the last of her wine into the sink. "You should go get cleaned up. You look like you've been working yourself to death." Her voice was softer now, like she wasn't scolding me, more like she was worried. "I have been," I admitted, "double shifts almost every day." "Why?" She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I hesitated, trying to save up. "I don't want to keep asking my dad for help." Something in her face shifted at that, the smallest flicker of sympathy. "He doesn't mind helping." "Yeah, but I do," I said. "Feels like I'm still the kid who moved in here, you know." She was quiet a long moment. "You were 16 then, and you were 41. She finished for me, a smile tugging at her mouth. I remember. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly, but it was heavy. I caught myself looking at her hand where it rested on her arm, the faint indent of her wedding ring tan line still visible. She noticed my glance and let her arms fall to her sides. "Your father travels so much these days," she said quietly. "The house feels empty when you're not here." That admission landed deeper than I expected. She rarely said things like that. "You get lonely?" I asked. She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Lonely enough to talk to you at midnight in the kitchen." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. I just stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint smudge of mascara under her eye, the way her lips pressed together like she was holding something back. "You've changed," she said after a pause. You used to avoid me. I swallowed. You used to avoid me too. That earned me a look one I couldn't read, but didn't want to look away from. When she brushed past me, her hand touched my shoulder. It could have been accidental, but her fingers stayed there just a second too long. I felt the warmth of it even after she moved toward the hallway. She stopped at the doorway and glanced back. Good night. It should have sounded ordinary. But her voice caught slightly, like the word wasn't enough. I stayed where I was, feeling the echo of her hand on my shoulder. The next night, I found her in the living room. No wine this time, just her sitting cross-legged on the couch, scrolling her phone in the dim light. "You're home early," she said without looking up. "Yeah," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Shift ended early." Her eyes finally met mine. "Good. You should rest." I should have gone upstairs. Instead, I sat on the other end of the couch. Not close but not far enough to feel casual either. "Your dad called today," she said almost too lightly. "He asked about you. What'd you tell him? That you're working too hard?" Her tone softened, and she reached for the throw blanket beside her. When she pulled it over her lap, the edge brushed my leg. "You didn't tell him about last night," I said quietly. She froze, just for a second. There was nothing to tell. I wanted to believe that, but the way she avoided my eyes said she hadn't stopped thinking about it either. Before I could reply, a phone buzzed on the coffee table. She grabbed it quickly, too quickly, and turned the screen away. "Everything okay? Just a friend." Her answer was clipped, final, but her hand stayed curled around the phone a little too tightly. We sat there in silence, the air between us charged. I watched her thumb absently trace the edge of the blanket. My pulse thudded in my ears. "You keep looking at me like that," she said suddenly, voice low, "and someone's going to notice." "Who's here to notice?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her knee through the blanket. "You don't make this easy," she murmured. I almost laughed, except my chest was too tight. "You think you're making it easy for me." She finally looked at me, really looked, and the space between us felt unbearably small. Then footsteps creaked upstairs. We both froze. A door closed somewhere down the hall. We exhaled at the same time, quietly, as if that would keep us invisible. When I looked back at her, she hadn't moved away. If anything, she was closer now. Her hand rested on the couch cushion between us, fingers brushing mine like she hadn't realized it. I turned my hand over, just enough to let her touch linger. She didn't pull back. Her breath hitched, so faint I barely heard it. We didn't kiss, not yet, but the moment stretched so long it almost felt like we had. She stood first, breaking whatever spell we'd been under. "Good night," she said, but she was still standing too close. The storm came without warning, heavy rain against the windows, thunder rolling close enough to shake the glass. The power blinked once, then went out completely. I found her in the kitchen, standing by the window, watching the rain. Only the faint glow from my phone lit the room. "Power's out," I said. "I noticed," she replied, but her voice was softer than usual, distracted. The storm made the house feel smaller, like every wall had moved closer. I stepped beside her, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then shook her head. "I hate storms. You didn't used to," I said before I could stop myself. She glanced at me, a little surprised. "You notice everything, don't you?" I didn't answer. I just reached past her and grabbed a flashlight from the counter. The beam lit her face, damp hair curling against her temple, eyes reflecting the light like glass. She took a step closer. "You shouldn't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you know what I'm thinking." I set the flashlight down on the counter. The light threw our shadows against the wall, too close together to pretend we weren't. "Maybe I do," I said quietly. Her breath caught, and for a long moment neither of us moved. Then she turned toward me fully, closing the last bit of space between us. "You think this is easy for me?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. "No," I said, "but you keep acting like I'm the only one who feels it." Her hand moved slow, hesitant, brushing wet hair out of her face. When her fingers fell, they grazed my wrist. I didn't pull away. "Say it," I whispered. Her eyes held mine, searching as if weighing the risk. "You've grown into a man I can't ignore," she said again, but this time it wasn't just an observation. It was a confession. Something in me snapped, or maybe it clicked into place. I stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her through the thin fabric of her robe. Her hand rested on my chest, not pushing me away, just. There, the storm thundered outside, the kitchen so quiet I could hear her breathing. I bent my head until my lips were almost at her ear. Then don't. Her eyes fluttered shut, her face tilting up toward mine. We were a breath away from crossing the line when the lights flickered back on. The lights humming back to life didn't make the house feel safer. If anything, it made the moment more dangerous. We both stepped back at the same time, as if the brightness had caught us doing something wrong. She was the first to speak. "We should," but then her phone buzzed again on the counter, the same tone as the night before. She froze, staring at it like she didn't want me to see. "Go ahead," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice came out rough. She hesitated before picking it up. I saw the name flash on the screen before she turned it away. "Dad." I blinked. "He's calling you." Her throat moved as she swallowed. "He's been calling all week." "You didn't say anything." She set the phone down, screen still glowing. "Because I knew it would change this. I stepped closer, not angry, just thrown. "What are we doing exactly?" She turned to face me, arms folded across her chest like armor. "He thinks I'm lonely. He told me to keep you company." His exact words. The air felt like it left the room. "So what?" I asked. "That's why you're here every night? Because he asked you to babysit me?" "No." Her voice cracked on the word I wanted to. "That's the problem." The silence that followed felt heavier than thunder. She pressed her palms against the counter, gripping the edge like it could hold her steady. "He doesn't know how bad it's gotten, how close we are to." She trailed off, shaking her head. "To what?" I asked, stepping closer until we were almost chest to chest. Her breathing quickened. I could see her hands trembling on the counter. "You should hate me for this," she whispered. "I don't." That made her look up at me, really look, and there was something raw in her eyes, like she was caught between wanting me to stop and daring me to come closer. I reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move, didn't even breathe. "Then tell me to walk away," I said. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she stepped around me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. At the doorway she stopped, gripping the frame like she might fall. "Meet me tomorrow," she said without turning around, "when the house is empty." And then she was gone, leaving me in the kitchen with my heart pounding like the storm hadn't really passed at all. The next afternoon, the house was empty just like she said it would be. I found her in the living room, pacing. She stopped when she saw me, but she didn't smile. I almost called it off, she admitted. "But you didn't." "No," she said, her voice quiet but steady. I stepped closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted. She didn't move. "I didn't sleep last night," I said. Her eyes softened. Neither did I. We stood there, not touching, but so close I could feel the heat coming off her. The whole house was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. "If we do this," she said finally, "we don't get to take it back." "I don't want to," I said, surprising myself with how certain it sounded. Her hand twitched at her side like she wanted to reach for me, but couldn't make herself do it. I closed the distance, my chest brushing her arm. "You think I haven't been fighting this?" she whispered. "I know you have." Her breath trembled. I raised my hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She leaned into the touch before she could stop herself. "Say it," I said. Her eyes locked on mine, and this time there was no hesitation. "I want you." That was enough. I stepped forward, closing the last inch between us. She didn't back away, she moved closer, until I could feel her heartbeat against me. Her hands came to rest on my chest, light at first, then gripping my shirt like she was afraid I'd vanish. "You're sure?" she asked, barely a whisper. I nodded. "I've been sure." The air between us felt too thick to breathe. She tilted her face up, and I bent my head until our foreheads touched. For a long moment, we just stayed there breathing the same air, holding on like the world outside didn't exist. Then she kissed me. It wasn't perfect, it was too rushed, too desperate, too full of everything we'd been holding back, but it was real. When we finally broke apart, neither of us stepped back. "So what now?" I asked, my voice low. Her fingers were still curled in my shirt. "Now we figure out how to live with this," she said. And somehow, even with everything complicated and uncertain, I felt lighter than I had in months. The next morning, the world felt strangely calm. The storm had passed, the sun streaming through the windows like nothing had ever happened except everything had. I found her in the kitchen again, this time making coffee. She looked up when I walked in, and something in her face softened instantly, like she'd been waiting for me. "Morning," I said, careful, testing the word. "Morning," she echoed, but her smile gave her away. For a second, I didn't know what to do with my hands, my body where to stand. After last night, everything felt different. She must have noticed because she put the coffee pot down and came around the counter. "We don't have to make this complicated," she said. "It already is," I said. "True," she admitted and stepped closer. "But that doesn't mean it has to be wrong." Her hand found mine, slow but certain. She didn't rush it, just laced her fingers through mine and held on like she meant to stay. "You're not scared anymore?" I asked. She took a breath, her thumb brushing across my knuckles. "I am, but last night, I realized I'd be more scared of losing this, losing you." Something loosened in my chest. I squeezed her hand. "Then we try. Whatever this is, we try." Her smile deepened, a little shaky but real. She stepped closer until I could feel the heat of her body. I slid my free hand to her waist, tentative at first, but she leaned in, resting her forehead against my chest. For a long moment we just stood there like that, the smell of coffee filling the room, the sunlight warm on our backs, the whole house quiet except for our breathing. When she finally looked up, there was no hesitation this time. She cupped my face with one hand and kissed me again, slower than last night, steadier, like we had all the time in the world now. When we pulled apart, I didn't let go of her hand. "So," I said, a little breathless. "Coffee," she laughed softly, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Coffee first, then we figure out everything else." And for the first time, it didn't feel impossible.